What's cracking, party people? It's your girl Nicole Banister, aka NIKKI BANZ, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. Today I'm interviewing Safia Elhillo right here on NIKKI BANZ Live! Yes, party people, we are back! And it feels good. It feels so good! Hey! I feel good. I knew that I would. Hey, I feel nice. Hey, like sugar and spice. Hey, so good. So good. I got you. I hope those are the lyrics to the song, because honestly, I don't even think I really know the real lyrics to the song, but I think I did pretty good nonetheless. What's up, everybody? Show some love in the comments. Show some love in the chat. Where y'all at? Where y'all coming from today? Where are y'all in the world? Y'all in the good old US of A, just like me? Y'all coming in hot from Tanzania? Are y'all in Uzbekistan? Are y'all in India? Where in the world are you, party people? Tell me in the comments right now. I need to know. And welcome back to your favorite Tuesday interview series, NIKKI BANZ Live. Look, you already know. I took a little break, okay? I took a little break. I did NIKKI BANZ Live every single Tuesday for 2 years. Every Tuesday for 2 years. And in that time, I was bringing on actors, rappers, dancers, comedians, all sorts of phenomenal artists, entertainers, and creatives from across the globe, right? Here on NIKKI BANZ Live, we had Beyonce's drummer, Queen Cora Coleman. We had Nigeria's first ever Winter Olympian, Simi Adeagbo. We had a Netflix reality TV superstar from Indian matchmaking, Pavneet Sakdeva. We've had so many people from all over the world, and I was trying to bring y'all a different guest from a different country every single week, okay? And now, after a year of being quiet, after a year of, reflection, creativity building, introspection, I decided, you know what, this September, I'm going to do a little special, okay? I'm going to do a little September special and come back and bring you an exclusive NIKKI BANZ Live, a 1 month only special, where this month, every Tuesday, I'm bringing y'all some amazing artists, some amazing guests, some amazing creative, starting right here, right now, with the phenomenal Sudanese-American poet and author, Safia Elhillo. And it's going to be absolutely amazing, y'all. I can't wait to chop it up with her. We're going to get to it in just a moment. But let me take a look and see where y'all at, okay? Where y'all at in the chat? Okay, I see Dancing Sameen in the comments saying from LA. What's up? What up? What up? I have to say that's my mom. Thanks, Mom. Love you. Thanks for being here. We love a little parental support. Okay? We love it. We love it. Who else is here? Y'all gotta tell me where y'all are. I see it's Abba Like Lava in the building. I see Iman tuning in all the way from Malaysia. Okay, we international. We international out here. We got Malaysia in the building. What's up, Iman? We got Abba Like Lava all the way from Joburg, South Africa. Hold up, y'all. We got South Africa, Malaysia. We got the United States of America. Hold up, y'all. I'm telling y'all, this is amazing. I'm so happy to have you all here. Thank you all for being here. And this is the whole point of NIKKI BANZ Live, to bring you diverse conversations with creatives from across the globe. We're all working to make this world a more interesting, a more dynamic, and a more equitable place. So that is NIKKI BANZ Live. We back for a September special. Mark your calendars right now. This time, every single Tuesday for the next 4 weeks, we gonna be live. All right, but Today, party people, I am so excited to have Safia here in the building. She is an award-winning author and poet. She has talked and given her poetic speeches on millions of stages across the globe, some of the biggest stages, TEDx, TED-Ed, all over. This girl is a poet. She is the poet with the mostest. Okay, I'm the hostess with the mostest. She's the poet with the mostest. All right, she's based here in LA. I recently had the pleasure of meeting her, and I said, you know what, girl, we gotta hop on this live. We need to have a little conversation. Let's chop it up with the people. So I see everybody tuning in now. I see Lucy is here. Welcome, Lucy. I see my boo Charles is here. Hi, Charles. Good to see you, honey. I see Relly, my amazing lash tech in LA. I know she gonna get on me. She gonna say I need to come back for these lashes. Don't look, Relly. Don't look. It's okay. It's like, I know I'm like a month out. I need to come in. But let's get the party started, y'all. y'all. Are y'all ready for the one and only Safia Elhillo? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's get it cracking. I'm gonna bring her on right now. Here we go. Give me a little drum roll. Give me that drum roll. And author Safia Elhillo, let's get it.
Hi.
Yes. Hi, my dear.
Hi, my love.
How are
I'm
you?
good. How are you doing?
I am so good. We got the curly-haired queens up in the building today. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed. How has your day been so far?
So, I am not a morning person, so this is the first thing I'm doing today. So far, so good.
Real talk, I was going to ask you that. I was like, you might have just rolled out of bed and come straight onto this call. You know what I mean? I'm honored. I'm blessed and I'm honored. Thank you, Safia, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Oh my gosh, of course. So, okay, whenever I start NIKKI BANZ Live, I always like to share a little bit about how I know the guests who are on this show. And you and I connected very recently, just like in the last month. All right. And I see people in the chat, CEO of Curl saying, yes, Sudan in the building. Yes, we outside. Okay. But Safia, you and I met. We have a mutual friend. Shout out to Amani Osman. We have a beautiful mutual friend. She's based in Nairobi in Kenya, but she was here in the good old US of A visiting me. And she said, you got to meet my girl, Safia. She's amazing. She knows everybody. She's one of the greatest creatives out there repping Sudan. And I was like, okay, let's go meet Safia. And so that's how we met just a couple of weeks ago. And now here we are.
A couple weeks ago, but you've already been to my house more times than most people who I've known for years.
Literally, that first week that we met, I think I was at your place like 4 times. Yeah. And I was like, wow. And I have to say, you have an absolutely beautiful home. Okay, I gotta say that. Let me shout out the crib. Okay. So Safia, it's amazing to have you here and to see you. And I think it's one thing when you look online and it's like Safia, poet, author. It's one thing to see like what the people are saying about you, right? I would love to hear how you introduce yourself. Like when you meet somebody brand new or you go to a new event and do something, how do you introduce yourself? Talk to the people here today on NIKKI BANZ Live.
Okay. How do I introduce myself? My name is Safia Elhillo. I am a Sudanese-American poet, Sagittarius sun and moon, Aries rising.
Ooh, okay, she said star sign.
Right.
I love it. I need to work on my astrology because I'm like, I can't even translate. I'm like, I don't know. Somebody in the chat, tell us, what does that mean? I don't know. I love it. I love it. But it really just goes to show, and it's a testament to the fact that for you, you are tapped into creativity, let me say from the source, right? It is this intersection of your identities, of your background, of all these different things that make you who you are, that bring out what you do in your incredible work, that bring out what you do whenever you're speaking, whenever you're writing. So talk to us a little bit about what is your why? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah. So my head is blocking it right now, but you see a lot of books here in the background. And that is my why. I was a big reader growing up. I've, been like an obsessive reader since I was a very young kid, like reading the back of the cereal box until someone got me a book. And in all of those years of just like devouring literature, it was always with an understanding that I wasn't the person that was directly being addressed in the stuff that I was reading. And I still had to find my way in, had to be like, okay, this character has curly hair, but she's white. This character like speaks Arabic at home, but she's not Black. Just all of these like contortions of trying to find myself in like almosts. And so for a very long time, I like very simply and basically wanted to be like, I want to open a book and see a Sudanese American character in it, Because the entirety of my schooling has been in English, I speak Arabic at home, but I don't read it particularly well. And so that means that there's basically a whole canon of literature that was inaccessible to me growing up. And in the canon of literature that I am most literate in, that's also inaccessible to me on like a more intimate level. So um, I, yeah, I like at the most basic level wanted to be able to open a book and be like, hey, you know, that's not exactly me, but we share some overlap. And I guess I started from there, and have somehow 16 years later made a career off of just like telling people my business and talking about my feelings.
You know what? Well, we love a little business sharing and a little feeling sharing. And I think, speaking to this idea that you were, reading books that didn't have characters that represented you, we see that in so many different forms, right? Whether it's books, whether it's media, it's like, where are the people who look like us, talk like us, sound like us, have the same background? And we need that representation. And that's part of the reason why the work that you do in your books and your poetry is so powerful, because it's giving a voice to people who haven't been able to have that voice before, and especially not on the platforms and in the fora that you are speaking, right? And in the places that you are sharing. And I think that's just something that's so important. And you think that in 2024 we'd have gotten that down by now, but we're not there yet. I'm curious for you, because it's interesting to me, like writing poetry seems to be like one thing, right? But you actually have this whole history of like speaking and reading your poetry. I was reading that you had a lot to do with the slam poetry scene in DC. As someone who spent a lot of time at places like Busboys and Poets, back in my Georgetown days, that's something that really resonates with me. And even the New York slam space, like, is there a different kind of feeling or energy for you when you're like writing a poem versus like speaking a poem out loud into existence? How does that feel for you?
Yeah, so I came of age during an era where people loved for there to be this binary between page poetry and stage poetry. And I just, that binary has always been so boring and kind of racist to me. So I try not to like dignify it with that much attention. But I did, the very, very beginning of my poetry life was at open mics at Busboys and Poets. Like shortly thereafter, I joined the DC Youth Slam team. I was on slam teams in college. And so while I have not been in a poetry slam in, I don't know, 11 or 12 years at this point, for as long as I have been writing poetry, I've had a relationship to hearing my poems be read out loud. And I've had a relationship to having like an embodied relationship to my poems. So now, even if I'm not literally like memorizing a poem to go compete at a poetry slam with it, it's still like a core component of how I revise my poems, for example. Because the performance component was like one of the earliest formalized teaching that I got, like formalized training experiences I had as a young poet. My ear is still so much older than my eye, for example. So I can read a draft of a poem and be like, this looks fine, looks like a poem.
Yeah.
And then when I read it out loud to myself, my ear will start to catch things that aren't quite right, that need to be revised. And so, while I'm not on slam teams anymore, like reading poems for scores, I still very much apply that training, like in almost every instance of my life as a poet, because it's, and I think it feels important for me to claim that part of my foundation and my history, because people really do still to this day really cape for that binary, and love to be like, page poetry somehow more prestigious or intelligent than performance poetry. And I just think that's such a useless stance. And so I do think it's like, even though I have not been in a slam in many years, to like talk about the fact that I started out in slam. And even, as I'm publishing books and everything, like I just think it's important to pay tribute to my background in performance and everything, because it's what made me a poet. It's what started my life as a poet. And so it's not something I'm like interested in outgrowing. You know what I mean?
I love that. It's not something that I'm interested in outgrowing. I think that's just such a beautiful way of putting it. And it's interesting, like the more you know, right? Because for me, as someone who's not in the poetry space, I would have never known that there was this tension between like spoken versus written.
It's
I'm
tense.
like, oh, like no clue whatsoever, right? But it's so interesting how within these spaces we create these hierarchies, we create these dynamics, even within like a certain industry or a certain sector, right? And I feel like the point that you made at the end there about outgrowing it is so interesting, because I was reading one of the interviews that you did recently about your I think it was your first book, The January Children, and you wrote something like I don't even really agree with or identify with a lot of the response, like the poetry and the things that I said at that time anymore, right? Like it almost feels like that those words in that book isn't even mine anymore. That's what you said in this interview, and I thought that was so interesting, because I think as part of the creative process, we have to put things out there and we have to do things at the time that feel right and that make sense. But as creative beings and as our consciousness continues to rise and to evolve, then we grow, right? We change, we shift, we're like, crabs, we molt, right? Like we shed our skin and we become somebody new. And so I'm curious for you, as you grow, as you evolve, as you change, as your poetry changes, as your sound changes, as your voice changes, how do you continue to fully embody the new version of yourself when some people might still only remember you or acknowledge you as an older past version of yourself? So I think this is something that creative people really struggle with. Like, I'm here, I'm new, this is who I am now, but other people are still clinging on to this version of you that no longer exists.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that Jay-Z put it best when he said, niggas want my old shit, buy my old albums. Like it's already accounted for. It's like the time capsule exists in a tangible object. And so there is a record of that version of myself and of my thinking. And so I no longer have to tend to it in any way, because it's its own fully formed organism at this point that doesn't need me to like keep pouring into it. And I do think it's helpful to think of each project as a time capsule in that way, because if I required of a project that it like represent the entirety of my consciousness and my belief system for all eternity and everything that I believe now and will believe in the future, then I'm never going to make anything. You know what I mean? That's an impossible standard. And so it's okay for something to be a little embarrassing to me right now, but felt like the entirety of the truth in the moment. The poems in The January Children, I wrote those between the ages of 20 and 24. Of course, I don't agree with them anymore. I'm 33 now.
Right.
Like I have literally brain cells now that I did not have then.
Right.
So it's fine. But it also, I think everything works kind of chronologically in that way, where in order to get where I am today in my thinking, I needed to spend some time just in the like maybe overly simplistic takes in that book, and find a way to articulate them, put them down somewhere, almost do an exorcism in that way, so that I could move past it and be able to be in a position where I can look back and be like, oh, actually, not really. You know what I mean? But I still needed to see it through and be able to get to the other side of it, just to be like, actually, you know what? I've changed my mind, which like, I think we all have a right to do. Unfortunately, when I change my mind, there's often a record of some shit I used to believe in the rear view, but it just is what it is.
Yeah. I love that. And that really makes me think about, I think we've spoken about this before outside of this interview. It makes me think of something that I learned from doing The Artist's Way, right? This creativity book that I know I, for one, love. I mean, it's something, I've only done it once. I know people who do it like every year. I've only done it once.
I've never finished it.
Yes.
I keep meaning to, but.
You know what? As I like to say, all in divine timing. You will finish it, Safia. Exactly when you're meant to finish it, you will finish it.
Thank you.
But it was something that I read as part of that process. And for those who don't know, The Artist's Way is this creativity course. It's a book, but it's a course that helps you interrogate your relationship with your creativity and your finances, your creativity and your self-doubt, all these things. And something that I read there was that like everybody has to crawl first before they fly. So if you're so worried about producing something or publishing something in the crawling stage, you will never even get to the point of flying because you have to crawl first, right? You have to crawl first, and then you're gonna walk, and then you're gonna run, then you're gonna fly. And I feel like that was something that you just put so poignantly. It's like that those things are in the rear view, and I had to do them at the time because that's what felt right. And now here we are in this newer state, in this evolved state. And you're right, we all have the right to change our minds. That's a bar right there, Safia. One of the things that I think is so beautiful about what you do is bringing together all of these really diverse and dynamic identities, right? Being Black, being Muslim, being a woman, being Sudanese, being American. And as incredible as it is to see someone like you coming out and publishing these books and speaking to this narrative and being the representative that you are, I know it can be hard to be the first. I know it can be hard to be the person who is out there shattering those glass ceilings, being the person who is saying the things that everyone is thinking and actually putting it out there. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you are able to continue to be true to yourself, even in the face of some of those challenges for people who are not ready or not willing to hear the narrative that you are trying to put out there?
Yeah, I actually think I'm very fortunate to not be the first. I think I'm very lucky to be in such lineage and in such community. So I grew up reading the books of Layla Abu Al-Ila, for example, who's a Sudanese writer based in the UK, and Jamal Mahjoub, who I believe is also based in the UK. Everyone is that. That's where the other big diaspora is at.
Yeah.
And reading Taib Saleh in translation, but also my maternal grandfather was a poet and was always right there. You know what I mean? I grew up with him in the house. My maternal aunt is a poet, playwright, screenwriter. All of it has like 10,000 MFAs. So I feel very lucky that I was never by myself in this process. I was always someone's kid. I was always someone's child. I was always someone's mentee. And so I never did have the experience of that particular loneliness of like trying to pioneer something or trying to break ground. I always had the privilege of being very among. As a poet, as a Sudanese person, as a young person, I grew up in a very insular Sudanese diaspora community in DC. I grew up going to Sudanese school on the weekends and all that. And so for as long as I've been alive, I've been surrounded by Sudanese people. For as long as I've been a poet, I've been surrounded by other poets. And so I very much play a team sport. You know what I mean? And I don't know that it would have been, I don't know that I have enough of like a pioneering spirit that if I was truly by myself in this, that I would have kept going. I need to have people around me to check in with and be like, is this the right answer? Am I using this word correctly? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that is what kept me even wanting to be a poet. You know what I mean? Where it wasn't even that it was something that I was immediately good at from the beginning, where I was like, wow, this is my calling. It was, it was so not. The poems were so not good. But the thing that made me want to keep coming back, even like to that open mic at Busboys, for example, every week, that made me want to keep coming back until I got better, is that I saw that there was such a community aspect to it, and I really wanted to be a part of that community. I wanted to belong to those people. And so I was like, okay, if the cost of entry to this community is to just keep showing up and writing poems, like I'll write 5 poems, I'll write 10 poems,
Yeah.
And so I think the fact that I had access to the work of so many other Sudanese artists when I was growing up just made it feel so possible for me. So I, at no point have I ever felt like I was inventing something or pioneering something. I'm really just walking the path that my elders set out for me. And I'm very grateful that I have that direction to look towards, because I do know a lot of people have to do this by themselves. And I'm very fortunate that I never had to.
I'm snapping it up. We back in the poetry house now. Give me the snaps. I'm so glad that you shared that, because even reflecting on my own question there, I think it's more the feeling of feeling lonely, which I think people of color or immigrants or people from the diaspora can feel. And that's just a feeling. It's not the reality. The reality is we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. We walk the path of our ancestors, like you said. And the second that you start to actually put yourself out there and say, okay, I just need to show up. And if I keep showing up, wow, I'm going to find people who, who are supporting me and who are taking care of me and exalting me, right? And so it's just that reminder that actually those communities do exist, and as women, and as people of color, and as the diaspora, and as immigrants, and those communities do exist, even if we sometimes can't see, right? So that's the power of showing up and being like, no, I'm just going to keep doing this thing, and my community will find me.
Exactly.
That's beautiful. And I know that the Sudanese community in particular is one that is so strong. Okay, shout out to all the Sudanese.
You're an honorary member.
Literally, I feel like an honorary member, and we've had some incredible, Sudanese guests here on NIKKI BANZ Live, journalist Yusra Al-Bahir, people like that. It's just so incredible. But there's a lot of people who don't know anything about Sudan. There's a lot of people who don't even know like where it is. Oh, I'm like, hey, Chris.
Celebrity guest. Oh, he's in headphones.
It's okay. We won't disturb him. Off in the background, but there's a lot of people who don't know much about Sudan. I just saw somebody here on the chat, Andrea, saying she's tuning in from the Philippines. There's people here from South Africa. There's people here from all sorts of places, and I would love to hear from your perspective, like for someone who's just learning about Sudan, for someone who's like, I don't know anything about that country, anything about that place. Like, talk to me about how you talk about your home country.
Yeah. So Sudan, once upon a time was the biggest country in Africa, but now it's still, I think, like top 10. It is in East Africa, north of South Sudan, south of Egypt, west of Ethiopia, Eritrea, east of Chad. So it's, that little pocket. Yeah. One of the things it is oftentimes known for is Khartoum, which is the capital, which is where my family is from, is the site where the Blue Nile and the White Nile meet to form the larger Nile that then famously flows upward into Egypt. And that shape that it creates, the two Niles flowing into that one big Nile, kind of looks like an elephant's trunk. And so the name Khartoum is the trunk of the elephant.
I didn't know that. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, hold on. I'm learning today.
Yeah. So more fun facts about Sudan. We have more and older pyramids than Egypt. It's just theirs are bigger and perhaps better maintained. But we have more. What else do you know about Sudan?
Like in your own words, like what, what does Sudan mean to you? Maybe that's the question.
Yeah. Sudan, for me, my whole life has been like the site of my great love, my great complication, my great obsession. It is like one of the great sources of joy and pleasure in my life to be a Sudanese person among other Sudanese people. And also, oftentimes for most people who aren't Sudanese, anytime the name Sudan comes up, it's because something really bad is happening over there. So often the story about Sudan that every now and then will pop up in mainstream media is often a story of trauma, war, famine, genocide, like just drama, you know? And I think, as with most countries that face great hardship, like, yes, and, you know what I mean? Like, two things can simultaneously be true. So, as with most post-colonial African countries, it's just been hard to get our shit together in the 70-ish years since independence. Lots of military coups, lots of war, a lot of difficulty, and also, as is often the case with people from parts of the world in which a lot of difficulty is concentrated, just like incredible resilience, incredible capacity for joy. I might be prejudiced here, but Sudanese people are the funniest people you will ever meet. Just like incredible sense of humor. No one is funnier. And also, like, no one will find a more specific and cutting way to roast you. You know what I mean? So I'm always like half laughing, half crying at something a Sudani person said to me. And I think all of those things are connected, you know? I think it's like built into the culture to just have a really like holistic and nuanced view of the world, where like pain and joy can exist simultaneously, struggle and humor can exist simultaneously. Hospitality is like incredibly important in our culture, and so you know, the figure of speech is that a Sudanese person will like split their last date with you, even if it's all they have left. Date like the fruit.
Yeah.
And so it like, when I was experiencing those things in context, when I was like growing up in my Sudanese home, in my Sudanese diaspora enclave, I was just like, this is what it's like to be a person, you know? This is the default setting.
Right.
And then I left, and, you know, you go to some people's houses, they don't even offer you water, you know?
Literally.
You know what I mean? You go to some people's parties, there's not even hot food there.
Yeah.
So like.
Exactly. You're like, oh, that's culture shock.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I think now that I'm like out in the world with a home space of my own, I'm starting to understand like how so many of the things I grew up to value are inherently Sudanese: hospitality, generosity, community spirit. I think there's often in my like particular diasporic experience this like real push and pull between the fact that I originate in a deeply collectivist culture, but I'm also, for all intents and purposes, an American, which is a very individualist society. And so I'm like, excuse me, I need boundaries, I need privacy, I need space, you know? But also I like come from people who are deeply in each other's business. And so I'm like eternally trying to navigate the intersection of these two like very contradictory ways of being around people. You know, where often it'll be like the weird mutated way it'll show up is I'll be like, okay, like, hello friends, come to my house, let me feed you. I'm gonna go to the room for a few minutes to just like take some time to myself, but please, like, in my absence, eat, drink, be merry. I'll be back in like 20 minutes after I've like read a book and watched 3 TikToks on mute to reset.
Yes, exactly. And I'm glad that you are sharing that, because I think a lot of people, particularly if you're in the United States and you're coming from spaces like that, where you're growing up with parents from other countries, like even my mom is originally from Iran, born and raised there, and then came to the US. When you have parents who are coming from other countries and other places, it is that blending of worlds and cultures that you're like, okay, well, I kind of do a little bit of this because that's what I thought, because that's how I was raised, but then all of my friends here are doing this other thing, and I'm just trying to bring it somewhere here, you know. It's like it's a struggle, it's a balance, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say, I have to agree 1000% with the Sudanese hospitality. Not only from you being in your house, shout out to your beef pepperoni pizza. I'll never forget that.
Shout out Prince Street Pizza with the beef pepperoni.
Bro, that was a bomb. I was like, okay, hold up, maybe I don't need to eat pork anymore. Maybe I'm just like, it's done. Khalas, like, I'm done.
It is the Muslim agenda at work, trying to push beef pepperoni on everyone.
Literally, I'm like, okay, the beef pepperoni got me. but also from my actual trip to Sudan. I'm so grateful. I'm so blessed that I had the chance to visit Khartoum in 2018, right before the revolution. And just some of the most beautiful hospitality I've ever received in my life. It's one of the things that, like, as a Black American, you know, Black Iranian American, but having lived and grown up my entire life in the United States, you know, we are just fed such a narrative of the African continent and of places like Sudan that is just, to be frank, just complete bullshit. Let's just be honest, right? It's just a hot mess. I remember literally being on the plane to Sudan, sitting next to a US diplomat who was like, I'm sorry, why are you going to Sudan? And I was like, oh, I'm wedding hopping. I'm like, don't you know December is like wedding season in Sudan?
It's like the club. It's where you go to be seen.
Literally. I was like, oh, I'm wedding hopping. And she was like, excuse me? She was like, here's my card. When you need to call the embassy for extraction, you can call me. And I was like, babe, like, you live, like, and she lived like in Eritrea or something. I was like, you live on this continent and you still uphold these colonial mindsets, these antiquated practices and ideologies of African people. And the, you know, I was just like, what is this? And I had the best 2 weeks in Sudan, you know? And it's because of that hospitality that you mentioned, and it's because of how funny people are, and it's because of that collectivism, right? It's because people come together as a community, you know, people share, people amplify, people support. It's just beautiful. You know, so anyway, honored to be a honorary member. Shout out Sudanese.
One of us.
You know, literally, and also just like, we know that there's so much struggle and there's so much trauma happening, particularly right now in Sudan. Like, I'd be remiss not to acknowledge that, you know? And for people like you who have family still in Sudan, and all sorts of people watching this who still have family in Sudan, you know, it's something that people need to keep talking about and keep sharing about. Like, yes, we've got all eyes on Palestine at the moment, as we absolutely should, but we got to keep eyes on Sudan as well, you know? And we have to make sure that we are, you know, donating to charities, doing the good work to support in Sudan, helping our Sudanese friends and communities when they need it, you know, because that we are the global community. The diaspora is the global community that needs to step up with our resources and our Instagram followings and our IG lives and say, you know, free Sudan, right? Yeah. So
yeah. And then for folks who are in LA, I should have a flyer in a couple of days, but we are a group of Sudanese folks here who recently formed a collective called Yazouel Collective. And we're doing an event on September 17th in Lamert Park with a bunch of Sudanese DJs and musicians and poets. There will be merch. A bunch of aunties are coming up from the suburbs and making food and coffee and doing henna. And there will be some opportunities to donate there, but also, like, you know, some stations to write to your reps, some places where you can like get some information, because I know it's, you know, there's so much being asked of our attention at all times, and as our attention spans also are like at the least capable that they've been probably in human history. And so, you know, it might be that this will be a helpful opportunity to like just push Sudan to the front of some people's mind, even just for an evening, you know, where like there is so much that we have to attend to right now, and so much hurts and so much is in crisis. And I think my like least favorite corners of the internet are the ones that try and pit the world's crises against each other. Like, you can only care about Palestine or you can only care about Sudan. And I think that's nonsense. I think, first of all of our struggles are interconnected. You can't just like extract one out with a set of tweezers and leave everything else. They all have to do with each other, you know? And I think the ultimate goal of all of these movements is to build collective solidarity amongst all of our movements, because there's so many of us when you put us all together. You know what I mean?
Period. Period. I'm like,
that's my girl math for the day.
Literally, we about to start a revolution on this IG live. Like, brown people around the world, stand up. Let's go. Beautiful. We will definitely be keeping an eye out for that flyer, September 17th. And party people, if you are not following Safia yet, literally on this live right now, go to the top of your screen, click that little white arrow in the middle of the top of the screen. You can go ahead and you can follow Safia at Safia Mafia, so you can make sure you get all the latest updates on what's going on in LA, her latest book drops, her poetry, all the good things. So make sure you follow and stay involved. Once again, click that little white arrow at the top. Make sure you follow. You know, we got to give you your flowers, girl. We got to make sure people are following up. I see Omar in the chat saying Safia the goat. I saw our girl Amani earlier about the she was like, they not like us. That's it's true. It's true. That's very true. And I think one of the things I would love to chat about now, especially sort of like you know, thinking about this event that you have coming up and everything that we've been talking about, like, I think the reality is that when you are a creative person, well, let me not say, let me say my reality, let me use I statements. My reality as a creative person is that I have all these visionary goals, ideas, dreams, all these projects I want to execute. I want to host this amazing event, and then I want to make these postcards, and then I want to host this TV show. Like, there's so many different things that I want to do as creatives. And I know you are an insanely talented and creative person as well. And I think oftentimes when it comes to creativity, right, your cup runneth over. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, your cup can runneth dry. Okay, so can you talk to us a little bit about like the business of being creative? Like, so for people who are just like, I have all these ideas, I have so many creative things I want to do, but I don't actually know how to create a brand out of that, or I don't actually know how to publish books out of it or create a business around it. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because you are someone who I think has taken your creativity and kept it deeply authentic, deeply genuine to who you are and what you represent, but also in your bag. You are also in your bag, girl. So can you just give us some tips on how to balance that creativity and that entrepreneurship at the same time?
Yeah. So first of all, when I say that I'm a poet, that's just shorthand for the fact that I have like 12,000 odd jobs that all have something loosely to do with creative writing, you know? So, you know, like when we're talking about the business side, I guess the question is, how do I make money as a poet, right? And so it's a combination of book contracts, speaking engagements, freelance editing, commission work. I'm sure there's like a bunch of things I'm leaving off. Teaching, like, you know, any given year I've done like 12 jobs.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the trade-off that I have signed myself up for, which is that I'm very fortunate where I live a life of great freedom. I have a lot of freedom in my professional life. I very rarely have to do something I don't want to do. And the trade-off there is that there's absolutely no security. There's no safety net. I'm making it up as I go along. I don't have a salary. I don't have a macro contract. I don't have the like safety of institutional affiliation. And so it really is just like the Wild Wild West, which when it's working is really fun, really beautiful. I wake up in the mornings and I kind of get to make up my own day for the most part. And the downside is that there are some seasons that are slower than others, and then it's terrifying. And then those are the moments where I'm like, damn, should I have gotten a real job? Because you know what I mean?
A real job, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, my job is made up, and I am still like low-key surprised that I'm getting away with it, to be honest. I think I come from a family of deeply creative people, and everyone at some point just like had to get real and grow up and go like join the workforce. You know what I mean? And so I think for a really long time, I just kind of was bracing myself, waiting for that moment kind of externally to happen to me, for like a timer to go off, to be like, okay, you know, party's over. Right. Like go to the office, you know? And so far, you know, knock on wood, I'm 33, still with my fake job. Alhamdulillah, you know?
Alhamdulillah.
And I think it means that I oftentimes have to check in with myself to make sure that freedom is still the thing I value the most. So would I rather have this freedom than like make more money? I have to check in with myself every now and then to be like, okay, or maybe not even like, but like more stable income, for example, where I'm like, okay, do I value the fact of my days being my own to make over the stability of something like a paycheck and like a W-2? You know what I mean? Like, should I just go try to teach somewhere full time? Should I go try to get a full time editing gig? You know, and while those are all things that I love to do, to make it the main thing I do with my day, I think would mean that I get to spend less of my day doing other things that I also really value and also really love, but maybe can't monetize as quickly. And so, you know, the trade-off is like you make less money, but you have more freedom. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
but it also is a question of, and you know, like we live under late stage capitalism. Shit is bleak. It like is difficult for literally everybody. And so I also like need to keep a number in my head of being like, okay, this is what my life costs right now. This is the cost of my housing, my food, my therapy, my whatever, my haircut, you know, like that is, and it's helpful to have that number in my mind so I can have a sense of what enough money is, because I do think there is such scarcity around money in general here by design, that it is very easy to just stay on the hamster wheel for all eternity and be like, there's no such thing as enough money. But if I can maintain within myself a sense of what enough money is, then it is easier to resist the siren call of job stability or more lucrative enterprises. And so that way I can just keep being a poet with my made up job and be like, this makes me enough money that I can keep the lights on, keep my split ends trimmed, keep myself in therapy, and, you know, order takeout a couple times a week. That's good. That's enough, you know?
Beautiful.
But it's scary, and it means that I can't at any point just be like a passive participant in my life in that way, because it's not, I don't have anyone externally to dictate to me what my tasks are and what my, well, you know, sometimes people tell me what my deadlines are, but so much of my work days, I just have this big, like monster document of all of my tasks and all of the deadlines. And every day I come into this office, I sit at this desk and I look at that sheet, and based on like deadlines, my own personal bandwidth, if I feel more like writing poetry or prose or doing administrative work or creative work, then I go through that list. I pick my tasks for the day, I knock them out, and then you know, eventually someone will pay my invoice, but it takes a lot longer than it would if I had a salary, you know?
Right. Right. But I feel like you really have illuminated two things for me that I want everyone who's watching this live, you're watching it here on Instagram, you're watching the rerun on YouTube, two things that really stood out to me that I think are going to stand out to most, right? And that first question is, what do I value? Right? And you said you value your freedom. And that answer could be different for everyone. Maybe for some people, they do value money. Maybe that is the thing that they value the most. But for other people, maybe it's freedom. Maybe it's flexibility. Maybe it is, you know, joy. Maybe it's being active. Like, what is it that you value? That's question number one to ask yourself. Literally ask yourself that question, write it on a Post-it note and put it on your mirror. Like, what do I value, right? So that you're focused towards that every single day. And if you say, this is the thing that drives me, this is the thing that brings me joy, then you can be happy and be comfortable with that, regardless of all the noise of capitalism and the noise of, you know, deadlines and the noise of whatever. Like, this is the thing I'm working toward. I feel like that was gem number one that you dropped. And gem number two is asking the question, like, what is enough for me? Because enough for me might not be enough for you, might not be enough for her, might be not be enough for them, right? But like, what is enough for me? And that was something that for me, particularly living in South Africa for a decade, right? Like being outside the United States, what was enough for me in South Africa was not that much to, you know, friends living in the United States. But I didn't need what my friends in the United States had, because I was in South Africa and the exchange rate was working in my favor, and the quality of living was so much different, and the cost of living was just radically different and more in favor of people. And so I didn't need that much. Now I've been in LA for a couple months. I'm like, okay, what was enough 3 months ago? It's not enough for me anymore. Picking up side jobs left, right, and center. Because I'm like, yeah, it's not enough, right? But like, what is enough for you? And that's such a powerful question to ask yourself and interrogate with yourself, because it's not going to be the same for everyone. So I'm so grateful that you reminded all of us, on this live of that. And Safia, we got about 10 minutes left of our live interview. Everybody in the chat is just going crazy. People are joining left, right, and center. Zainab is laughing, saying, I feel like my job is made up. I'm loving all the energy. I see Marissa Alyssa saying the creative conundrum, dang it, capitalism. I mean, yep, facts. Someone is saying, thank you for your perspectives. Let me use these last 10 minutes. Oh, who's that? Three Rizzi saying our poet.
That is the prolific Yemeni American poet Fureyad Muntasar.
Oh, hello, Habibti. Hello. I love it. Deslin saying absolutely powerful questions to ask yourself. Zainab saying takes so much courage to choose freedom over a reliable paycheck. That's true. That does take courage indeed. Safia, okay, you have 4, incredible books out. You've got, Home is Not a Country, Girls That Never Die, The January Children, Bright Red Fruit. Talk to us about what the rest of 2024 is looking like for you. What projects, what are you excited about in these next couple months as we close out this year?
Yeah, I because of just the nature of publishing timelines, from 2021 until this year, I had 3 books come out in 3 years. Is that true? No, with 2023, nothing came out that year. But still, it was a lot back to back, and I did not write those books back to back that close together. And publishing is my least favorite part of writing, so it felt like all of a sudden I was spending time in my least favorite part of the life cycle of the thing. And it's just, I got to this year and I realized that it had been literally years since I began something, because I've just been in like revisions and book tour and whatever for ages at this point. So I am really relishing these days the early stages of things, where I'm like writing a bunch of little loose poems and they're not for a book. They're not even to like send to journals or magazines. Sometimes I email them to my friends. Most of the time they just live on my computer and no one has to see them, I'm like trying to teach myself to write in a bunch of other genres, which is really fun and also really humbling, because I have not, I started writing poetry when I was 15, 16 years old. I've not been a beginner at something for over half my life. It's very embarrassing and humbling, and fun also to like do something that I'm bad at and still do it, because I think, it was really like one of my big personality red flags is that I actively avoid doing stuff that I'm not already good at. It is not to psychoanalyze my own self, but I suspect it's part of the reason I don't know how to drive yet. But it like, I just have very low tolerance for being a beginner, because I have not had to be one since I was literally like legally a minor. And so I am finding a lot of pleasure in just being a beginner at a bunch of stuff, like trying to write prose, literally being like, how does one write a full sentence? Because I never learned.
Yeah.
All my shit has been in verse up until this point. Where does a comma go? How long is too long for a single sentence? So it's really fun not knowing in that way and trying to figure it out and trying to be resourceful, and also like asking for help when I need help, being like, hey, friend, community member who already does know how to do this thing, can you like look at this and tell me why it's bad and tell me how to fix it? And I feel very protective of this time right now. And on the other hand, I do feel like the itch, where the joke that I and often Chris will tell about me is that I'll be like in the midst of the publishing cycle and be like, I hate publishing. I will never write another book again. This is it. I'm done. And then like 2 days after the book comes out, I'll be like, you guys, should I write a book?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm like,